The crystalline walls of the throne room gleamed under the artificial lights of the warship. Marcus Chen stood in the center of the vast chamber, with his hands bound behind his back. 6 armed guards surrounded him with their weapons pointed at his chest. He looked around calmly as if he was simply visiting a museum instead of being a prisoner facing execution. Princess Seraphina sat on her elevated throne studying the human before her. Her blue skin shimmered with a faint glow, and her silver eyes held the weight of imperial authority. She was young for a Korath ruler, but everyone in the galaxy knew her reputation. She was brilliant and ruthless, and absolutely unforgiving to those who defied her empire. "You are Marcus Chen of Earth," she said in perfect English. Her voice carried the musical quality all Korath possessed. "You were caught gathering intelligence on our military installations on Valdris Moon? Do you deny this?" Marcus met her gaze without flinching. "No, I don't deny it." Seraphina leaned forward slightly. Most prisoners begged for mercy by now, or at least showed some fear. This human stood relaxed, as if they were discussing the weather. It irritated her more than she expected. "Kneel before your empress," she commanded. "Show respect, and perhaps your death will be quick." Marcus smiled. It was not a mocking smile or a nervous one. It was the kind of smile someone gives when they know something others don't. "I appreciate the offer, but I'll stand." The guards shifted their weapons nervously. General Vex, who stood beside the throne, stepped forward. He was tall, even for a Korath, with dark blue skin marked with battle scars. "You dare refuse the princess? You will kneel, or we will break your legs and make you kneel." "That would just be forcing my body into a position," Marcus replied calmly. "Not the same thing as genuine respect. Where I come from, we don't kneel to threats. We kneel only to those who've earned our respect through their actions and character." Seraphina felt her temper rising. No one had ever spoken to her this way. She was about to signal the guards to fire when something caught her attention. The energy readings from their weapons were fluctuating. She accessed her Neuralink to the ship's systems and discovered the weapons had been subtly tampered with. They would misfire if triggered. She looked at Marcus with new interest. "When did you do this?" "During the capture," Marcus admitted. "Your soldiers were rough when they dragged me through the corridors. Gave me plenty of opportunities to bump against their equipment. Humans are good with our hands even when they're tied." General Vex ordered 2 guards to check their weapons. They confirmed the sabotage. The general's face darkened with rage. "This proves his treachery. Execute him immediately with blades if the weapons won't work." "Wait," Seraphina commanded. She studied Marcus more carefully now. He had just revealed his trick when he could have let them discover it themselves. That suggested either foolishness or confidence. Looking at his steady gaze, she suspected the latter. "Why did you tell us about the weapons?" "You gave up your advantage." Marcus shrugged. "Because I didn't sabotage them to kill anyone. I did it so you'd know that humans always have options, even when we look defeated. I wanted your attention, princess, and now I have it." This was unprecedented. Seraphina had interrogated countless prisoners from dozens of species. They all followed predictable patterns of fear and desperation. This human was playing a completely different game. "You wanted my attention," she repeated slowly. "Why?" "Because this war between our people is pointless," Marcus said. "The Korath Empire is powerful and advanced. Earth is small and relatively primitive. But we've been holding you off for 3 years now. Don't you wonder why? Don't you wonder what drives humans to keep fighting when by all logic we should have surrendered?" Seraphina did wonder. It was a question that troubled her strategic planning. The humans should have collapsed after the first major defeat, but instead they fought harder. They used tactics that made no sense, sacrificing valuable resources for symbolic victories. They refused terms of surrender that were actually quite generous by galactic standards. "Enlighten me then," she said. "Why do humans fight so foolishly?" Marcus's smile widened. "We fight because we believe tomorrow can be better than today. We fight because we've seen empires like yours before in our own history, and we know they eventually change or fall. We fight because giving up isn't in our nature. You call it foolish. We call it hope." General Vex laughed harshly. "Hope is not a military strategy. It will not save your pathetic species. Maybe not, Marcus agreed. But it makes us dangerous opponents, doesn't it? Because you can't predict what someone will do when they refuse to accept the future you've planned for them. Seraphina found herself genuinely intrigued now. Her father had ruled the Korath Empire through fear and overwhelming force. She had inherited that same approach. Every species they encountered either submitted immediately or was crushed. Except humans. The humans were an anomaly. She made a decision that surprised even herself. I could execute you now and be done with it. But I think you might be more valuable alive. You will serve as my advisor on human psychology. You will help me understand your species so I can finally end this war. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And if I refuse? Then you die here and now, Seraphina said simply. But I don't think you'll refuse. Because you see the same opportunity I do? You'll have access to me and to imperial decision-making. You'll have chances to influence our strategy, maybe even change some of my perspectives. You'll take this offer because humans always believe they can make a difference. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You're right. I'll accept. But on one condition. You are not in a position to make conditions, General Vex growled. Seraphina raised a hand to silence him. What condition? That you actually listen, Marcus said. Don't just ask questions and ignore the answers you don't like. If you want to understand humans, you need to be willing to see the universe through our eyes, even if it's uncomfortable. Seraphina considered this. It was a strange request, and it suggested this human had plans beyond simple survival. But that only made the situation more interesting. Agreed. Guards, release his bonds. Marcus Chen is now under my personal protection. Anyone who harms him answers to me directly. As the guards removed his restraints, Marcus rolled his shoulders and rubbed his wrists. He looked up at Seraphina on her throne and gave her that same knowing smile. Thank you, Princess. I think this is the beginning of something neither of us expected. Seraphina wasn't sure if that statement was a promise or a warning. Perhaps it was both. She had just made a decision that would either help her win the war or completely change everything she understood about power. Only time would reveal which. As Marcus was led away to his new quarters, General Vex approached the throne. My princess, this is a mistake. Humans are deceitful. He will betray you. Perhaps Seraphina said quietly. But I've learned more about humans in the last 10 minutes than in 3 years of warfare. If understanding them ends this war sooner, then the risk is worth taking. She didn't mention the other thought in her mind. The thought that perhaps humans weren't the only ones who needed to change. Perhaps empires built on fear had their own weaknesses. Perhaps that smile Marcus wore suggested he already knew. Something she was only beginning to suspect. The war was about to transform into something. It's far more complex than simple conquest. And Seraphina wasn't entirely certain anymore which side would ultimately be changed more by this encounter. Part 2. The unlikely partnership. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus became Princess Seraphine's advisor. He lived in quarters that were comfortable but clearly monitored. Guards followed him everywhere. Still, he was alive and had access to the princess, which was more than he'd hoped for during his capture. Their first real test came during a diplomatic mission to the planet Theraxis. The Theraxians were insect-like beings who controlled valuable mining resources. They had been resisting Korath demands for increased production quotas. Seraphina sat in the conference chamber with Marcus standing behind her, as was his assigned position. The Theraxian queen sat across from them, surrounded by her own advisors. The room was tense. You will increase production by 40%, Seraphina stated, or we will consider your cooperation insufficient and take direct control of the mines. The Theraxian queen's mandibles clicked in agitation. We are already at maximum capacity. Your demands are impossible. We have told you this repeatedly. Seraphine's expression hardened. Then you must find ways to improve efficiency. The Empire's needs are not negotiable. Marcus had been watching the Theraxian advisors. Their body language showed fear but also resentment and exhaustion. He recognized that combination. It was the same look he'd seen on Earth when Korath forces made similar demands. He leaned forward and whispered to Seraphina, May I speak, Princess? She glanced at him with surprise. He had been mostly silent during previous meetings, observing and answering questions when asked. Very well. Marcus addressed the Thoraxian Queen directly. What if instead of increasing production, you improved product quality? The Empire needs resources, but refined high-quality materials are worth more than larger quantities of crude or... Your people are skilled craftsmen, according to the reports I've read. Why not capitalize on that? The Thoraxian Queen's antennae lifted with interest. You understand our situation? I understand being pushed beyond reasonable limits, Marcus said. But I also understand that cooperation works better when both sides benefit. You get to maintain sustainable production levels. The Empire gets more valuable materials. Everyone wins. Serafina was about to object when she paused. The logic was sound. High-quality refined materials would actually serve Imperial needs better than raw or... And the Thoraxians looked more receptive to this suggestion than they had to any demand. She adjusted her approach. This is acceptable. You will focus on quality refinement, and the Empire will provide the necessary equipment to improve your processing capabilities. We will revisit production numbers in 6 months based on the refined output. The Thoraxian Queen clicked her mandibles, and what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smile. This is agreeable. Thank you, Princess. And thank you, human. As they returned to the ship, Serafina was quiet. General Vex, who had accompanied them, was less so. You undermined the princess's authority in that meeting. You made her look weak by suggesting compromise. I made her look wise, Marcus corrected. There's a difference between strength and stubbornness. Real power is getting what you need without making enemies you don't have to make. Humans have strange ideas about power, Vex muttered. Maybe, Marcus agreed, but those ideas kept Earth independent when stronger species said we should surrender. Sometimes strange ideas work. Later that evening, Serafina summoned Marcus to her private chambers. It was the first time he'd been there. The room was surprisingly simple with few decorations. A large window showed the stars streaming past as they traveled through faster-than-light space. Explain something to me, Serafina said. She stood by the window with her back to him. Why do humans fight so hard when you are clearly outmatched? I've studied your species extensively since you arrived. You lack our technology, our physical strength, our psychic abilities. By every measure, you should have accepted subjugation. Yet you resist with a ferocity that costs you dearly. Why? Marcus joined her at the window, keeping a respectful distance. Because we've been the underdog before. Humans have a long history of facing impossible odds. We had world wars that nearly destroyed us. We had dictators who seemed unstoppable. We had diseases that killed millions. Every time we were told to accept defeat. Every time we found a way forward instead. That sounds exhausting, Serafina said. It is, Marcus admitted. But it's also who we are. We don't accept that the universe has already decided our fate. We believe we get a say in our own future. Is that really so hard to understand? Serafina turned to look at him. My father taught me that the universe respects only strength, that mercy is weakness. That ruling means making others fear you enough that they obey without question. These are the principles that built the Koroth Empire. And how's that working out? Marcus asked gently. You have an empire, but do you have allies? You have subjects, but do you have friends? You have obedience, but do you have loyalty? Loyalty is earned through victory, Serafina replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Loyalty is earned through trust, Marcus countered. Look at what happened today with the Thoraxians. They were afraid of you before, but they weren't loyal. Now they're grateful. That gratitude will take you further than fear ever could. Before Serafina could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Her neural link activated, flooding her with urgent information. Assassins had breached the ship's security. They were heading toward the royal quarters. Marcus reacted instantly. Get behind me! You are unarmed, Serafina pointed out, even as she accessed the room's defensive systems. I'm human, Marcus said. We're always armed if we're creative enough. The door exploded inward. 3 Koroth warriors in dark armor rushed in with energy blades drawn. They were clearly professionals, moving with coordinated precision. Serafina raised her hand and telekinetic force knocked one backward, but the other 2 kept coming. Marcus grabbed a decorative metal sculpture from a nearby table and threw it at the nearest assassin. It struck the warrior's helmet, creating a moment of distraction. Marcus charged forward, using that moment to get inside the warrior's guard. He couldn't match a Korath's strength, but he understood leverage and momentum. He redirected the warrior's blade strike, causing the warrior to stumble. Seraphina used her telekinesis to hurl the second warrior against the wall. The impact was severe enough to crack armor plating. But the first warrior had recovered and was moving toward the princess with blade raised. Marcus didn't think. He threw himself between them. The energy blade sliced across his shoulder, drawing a line of searing pain. But his interference gave Seraphina time to focus her power. The assassin was lifted into the air, slammed against the ceiling, then the floor with crushing force. Security guards poured into the room, securing the area. Medical personnel rushed to Marcus, who had collapsed, clutching his wounded shoulder. Seraphina knelt beside him, her hands checking the wound. "Why did you do that?" she demanded. "I threatened to kill you when we first met. You have no reason to protect me." Marcus managed a pained smile. "Maybe I'm hoping you'll change your mind about humans. Hard to do that if you're dead." As medical staff carried him to the infirmary, Seraphina remained on the floor of her chambers. The assassins were being interrogated, but she already suspected who was behind the attack. Elements within her own court who opposed her growing tolerance for the human advisor. She looked at the blood on her hands. Marcus's blood. He had sacrificed himself for her without hesitation, not because she had power over him, not because he feared her, but because he believed she could be better than she was. For the first time in her life, Seraphina questioned everything her father had taught her. Perhaps humans understood something about strength that the Korath had forgotten. Perhaps true power wasn't about making others kneel. Perhaps it was about inspiring them to stand beside you willingly. But these thoughts were dangerous. They challenged the foundation of her entire civilization. And as she would soon discover, there were those in the Empire who would do anything to preserve the old ways, even if it meant removing their princess from power. General Vex stood in a secure communication room, speaking with shadowed figures on encrypted channels. "The assassination failed, but we have another option. We will frame the human for espionage. Even the princess cannot protect a proven traitor. Once he is gone, we can return her to proper imperial thinking." The pieces were moving on a board much larger than Marcus or Seraphina realized. The question was whether they would recognize the trap before it closed around them. Part 3. The Trial of Trust. Marcus woke in a cold cell with his shoulder bandaged but still aching. The medical treatment had been efficient, but minimal. This wasn't the comfortable quarters he'd been staying in. This was a detention block designed for serious criminals. 2 guards stood outside his energy barrier. They wouldn't meet his eyes. That told Marcus everything. He'd been arrested, and whatever charges it manufactured were bad enough that even the guards felt uncomfortable. Hours passed before anyone came to explain. When they did, it was General Vex with a smile that showed too many teeth. "Good morning, traitor. I hope you slept well. It may be your last comfortable sleep for a very long time." "What's the accusation?" Marcus asked calmly. "Espionage. Transmission of classified military data to human resistance forces. We have evidence of encrypted communications from your quarters to known rebel networks. We have testimony from technical staff who helped you bypass security protocols. We have everything we need to execute you for treason against the Empire." Marcus studied Vex carefully. The general looked too satisfied. This wasn't the reaction of someone who'd uncovered genuine treason. This was the look of someone who'd successfully framed an enemy. "Where's Princess Seraphina? I want to speak with her." "The princess is reviewing the evidence," Vex said. "She is disappointed in your betrayal, but she understands duty. Even her pet human cannot escape justice." After Vex left, Marcus sat back against the wall. He could defend himself, could argue his innocence. But words wouldn't matter if the evidence was convincing enough. Instead, he thought about what he'd told Seraphina. About trust. About how humans believed in better futures even when things looked hopeless. Time to practice what he preached in the princess's chambers. Seraphina reviewed the evidence for the 5th time. The data transmissions appeared genuine. The technical testimony was detailed. Everything pointed to Marcus using his access to gather intelligence and pass it to Earth forces. But something felt wrong. She'd spent weeks with Marcus. She'd seen how he thought, how he operated. He was clever, yes, but not stupid. If he'd wanted to spy, he wouldn't have been so obvious about it. The transmissions were too easy to find. The witnesses too ready with their testimony. It was too perfect. She accessed her own records, pulling up everything she knew about the technical staff who'd testified against Marcus. 3 of them had been recommended for their positions by General Vex. 2 others had received recent promotions approved by Vex's office. All 5 owed their careers to her uncle. Serafina felt cold anger building. This was a setup. She went to the detention block herself over Vex's objections. When she entered Marcus's cell, he looked up at her with that same calm expression. No panic. No desperate pleas. Just patience. Did you do it? She asked directly. No. The evidence suggests otherwise. Evidence can be manufactured, Marcus said. Your uncle is good at his job. I'm sure it all looks very convincing. Then defend yourself, Serafina demanded. Give me reason to believe you. Prove your innocence. Marcus shook his head. I can't prove a negative, princess. I can't prove I didn't do something. All I can do is ask you to trust what you've learned about humans over these past weeks. We value honor. We value truth. Would I really throw away the chance to change the Empire to save my people, just to send a few intelligence reports? Would I really risk your life to save mine when I literally took a blade for you 3 days ago? Serafina wanted to believe him, but belief without evidence was weakness, wasn't it? That's what her father had taught her. Trust was for fools. Verify everything. I need more than your word, she said. I know, Marcus replied. That's why I'm not asking you to take my word. I'm asking you to be the brilliant tactical mind I know you are. Look at the evidence again. Not as accusations against me, but as a pattern. Who benefits from my removal? Who has the means to fabricate this evidence? Who has been opposed to your new diplomatic approaches from the beginning? Serafina left without another word. Marcus watched her go and hoped she was as smart as he believed. Because if she wasn't, he was going to die. The war would continue and nothing would change. For 3 days, Serafina investigated. She pulled security footage, reviewed communication logs, and interviewed staff. She didn't tell anyone what she was looking for. She especially didn't tell her uncle. The evidence unraveled under close examination. The encrypted transmissions had been routed through systems that only high-level military officers could access. Marcus's quarters were monitored constantly, and the logs showed no activity during the times. The transmissions allegedly occurred. The technical staff had stories that matched perfectly, which was suspicious because real memories rarely aligned so precisely. Most damning was a single frame of security footage she found buried in archived files. It showed General Vex entering Marcus's quarters while Marcus was in medical recovery after the assassination attempt. Vex had been there for 18 minutes. More than enough time to plant evidence. Serafina called an emergency council meeting. Every high-ranking officer and court official attended. General Vex sat in his usual position, looking confident. I have reviewed the evidence against Marcus Chen, Serafina announced. I have found it to be falsified. The human is innocent. This was an attempted frame operation designed to remove him from my service and undermine my diplomatic initiatives. Vex stood immediately. My princess, you are too close to this situation. Your judgment is clouded by affection for the human. The evidence is clear. The evidence is fabricated, Serafina countered. And I have proof that you planted it, uncle. Security footage places you in Marcus's quarters during the time frame when the incriminating data was uploaded to his systems. You had means, motive, and opportunity. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Vex's expression darkened. You would believe a human over your own blood? Over a general who has served this empire for 40 years? This is madness. This is justice, Serafina said coldly. You attempted to manipulate me. You tried to force my hand against someone under my protection. That is treason, General. Not his alleged espionage. Yours. Vex looked around the room, gauging support. Some officers looked uncertain. Others appeared sympathetic to the princess. He realized he'd miscalculated. You have changed since the human arrived. You have become weak. You make compromises with inferior species. You ignore the principles that built this empire. If this is treason, then I am guilty because I refuse to watch you destroy everything your father created. My father created an empire built on fear, Serafina said. Fear is effective, but it has limits. Marcus has shown me another way. A way that might actually achieve lasting peace instead of temporary submission. I will not abandon that possibility because you are comfortable with the old methods. She signaled the guards. Arrest General Vex. He will face formal charges of conspiracy and attempted sabotage of Imperial operations. As guards moved to detain him, Vex laughed bitterly. You are making a mistake, Princess. The Empire will not follow you down this path. Others share my concerns. This is not over. He was right about that, at least. As Vex was led away, Serafina saw the expressions on the other officers' faces. Some showed approval, but many showed doubt or barely concealed hostility. She had won this confrontation, but she'd also revealed a deep division within her own command structure. Marcus was released immediately. When he entered the council chamber, still wearing prisoner clothing, Serafina addressed the assembled officials. Marcus Chen has been falsely accused and is hereby cleared of all charges. He remains my advisor, and anyone who acts against him acts against me personally. Is this understood? The chorus of agreement was less than enthusiastic, but it was enough. Later in private, Marcus asked her the question she'd been expecting. Why did you believe me? You said you needed more than my word. I didn't believe you, Serafina admitted. I investigated. I found the truth. That's different from blind faith. But you started the investigation because some part of you wanted to believe I was innocent, Marcus pressed. You could have just accepted the evidence and moved on. Why didn't you? Serafina was silent for a moment. Because when you first refused to kneel, you smiled. At the time, I thought it was defiance. But later I realized it was something else. It was confidence in a future where we wouldn't be enemies, where I would be someone worth standing beside instead of someone to kneel before. That smile haunted me, Marcus. It made me want to become the person you seemed to think I could be. Marcus smiled that same smile. So I was right to trust you. Don't let it go to your head, Serafina said, but there was warmth in her voice. We have bigger problems now. My uncle was right about one thing. The Empire is divided. Many officers share his views, and there's urgent intelligence that just came in. A rogue Korath faction is planning to attack a human colony world with forbidden weapons. If I don't stop them, thousands of humans will die. And if you do stop them, you'll be protecting humans, Marcus finished. That will prove Vex's accusations to everyone who already doubts you. Exactly. Serafina looked at him seriously. This is the moment of truth, Marcus. I either commit fully to this new path, or I retreat to the old ways. There's no middle ground anymore. Marcus didn't hesitate. Then we stop them. Together. Because that's what partners do. Serafina felt something shift inside her. For weeks she'd been treating Marcus as an interesting experiment or a useful tool. But he was right. They'd become partners. And if she was going to change the Empire, she needed partners more than she needed subjects.
Very well,
she said. Let's save a human world. And let's show the Empire what cooperation really looks like. Part 4. The Battle for Two Worlds. The human colony of New Haven sat on the edge of explored space. 50,000 people lived there, mostly farmers and miners. They'd chosen the frontier life for its freedom, despite the dangers. Now they faced a threat they couldn't possibly survive alone. Seraphin's fleet arrived in the system, just as the rogue Korath forces began their attack. 12 warships loyal to militant commanders who believed the Empire had grown too soft. They'd brought a stellar disruptor, an ancient weapon banned by galactic law for good reason. It could ignite a planet's atmosphere, turning the entire world into a fireball. Marcus stood on the bridge beside Serafina, watching the tactical display. The colony's defense satellites were already falling. Their planetary shields would last maybe 20 minutes under sustained bombardment. We need to evacuate them. There isn't time, Serafina said grimly. We need to engage the rogue fleet directly. If we can destroy their command ship before they activate the disruptor, we might save the colony. And if we can't? Marcus asked. Then we all die together trying, Serafina replied. She opened a channel to her fleet. All ships engage the enemy. Target their command vessel, Priority 1. Do not let them activate that weapon. The battle began with brilliant flashes of energy weapons cutting through space. Seraphine's loyalist forces were outnumbered, but they had better training and coordination. The rogue ships fought with desperate ferocity, knowing they'd already committed treason. There would be no mercy if they lost. Then everything changed. General Vex's voice came over the emergency Imperial channel. He was supposed to be in custody awaiting trial, but clearly he'd escaped or been freed. Citizens of the Korath Empire, says General Vex, I speak to you in this dark hour to warn you of the threat within our own leadership. Princess Serafina has betrayed our people. She fights alongside humans against loyal Korath warriors. She has allowed alien influence to corrupt her judgment. I hereby invoke the ancient right of challenge. I claim the throne for the good of the Empire. Half of Seraphine's fleet suddenly turned their weapons toward her flagship. Officers loyal to Vex or sympathetic to his message had been waiting for this moment. The carefully planned mutiny was perfectly timed to leave. Serafina trapped between the rogue fleet and her own rebellious ships. Marcus watched the tactical situation collapse. We're surrounded. We can't fight both groups and protect the colony. Seraphine's face was calm, but Marcus saw the calculations running behind her eyes. She was trying to find a solution in a situation that had none. Suggestions. Call for help, Marcus said. From who? Earth's forces are 3 days away at best. Marcus smiled his trademark smile. From the people we're trying to save, and from principles the Korath seem to have forgotten. He took over the communication system before Serafina could stop him. Attention, New Haven Colony. This is Marcus Chen. I'm a human advisor to Princess Serafina. We're here to defend you, but we're outnumbered. I know you have no reason to trust Korath forces. I know we're the same species that's been trying to conquer Earth, but this princess is different. She's fighting her own people to protect you. If you have any weapons, any ships, anything that can help, now is the time. For a moment there was silence. Then the colony governor's voice came through. Marcus Chen. The Marcus Chen, who held the line at the Battle of Titan Station? Marcus blinked in surprise. Yes, how did you know? Because I was there. You saved my transport ship when you didn't have to. I owe you my life. The governor's voice strengthened. All colonial forces, this is Governor Williams. We're going to help. Launch everything we have. Dozens of civilian ships rose from the planet's surface. Mining vessels with improvised weapons, agricultural haulers that could ram enemy ships, private yachts with homemade missiles. They were hopelessly outmatched, but they came anyway because that's what humans did. When their homes were threatened, Serafina watched in amazement. They're going to get themselves killed. Probably, Marcus agreed. But they're buying us time. And they're showing your own people what real loyalty looks like. It's not based on fear or tradition. It's based on choosing to stand with someone because you believe in them. He opened another channel, this time to the Korath ships. This is a message for every Korath warrior in this system. Look at what's happening. Humans who have every reason to hate the Empire are fighting to protect Princess Serafina. Why? Because she showed them something you've apparently forgotten. That honor matters. That protecting the innocent matters. That strength means defending those who can't defend themselves, not slaughtering them with forbidden weapons. Some of the mutinous ships hesitated. Marcus pressed his advantage. You all joined the military to serve the Empire, right? To protect Korath interests and expand your civilization. But what are you protecting now? Generals who use banned weapons against defenseless colonies? Or a princess who's trying to build something better? Choose carefully, because this decision defines what the Korath Empire becomes. 3 ships broke away from Vex's formation, returning to Seraphine's side. Then 2 more. It wasn't enough to win, but it changed the dynamics. The mutiny was no longer unanimous. the rogue fleet's command ship, began the activation sequence for the stellar disruptor. Energy readings spiked across the system. They had maybe 5 minutes before the weapon fired. Serafina made a decision. Marcus, I'm taking an assault shuttle directly to that command ship. I'll board them and destroy the disruptor manually. You'll coordinate the fleet defense while I'm gone. It's suicide, Marcus objected. You'll never make it through their point defense systems. I'm the fastest pilot in the fleet, Serafina said, and I have telekinetic abilities that will help me survive. It's our only option. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Listen to me, Marcus said urgently. You'll need someone to handle the technical systems while you're fighting. I've studied Korath technology for 3 years. I can disable that weapon if you get me to it. We're stronger together, Princess. You know that. Serafina wanted to argue, but there was no time. She nodded sharply. Stay close to me. If you die, I'll never forgive you. Deal? They took the fastest assault shuttle in the bay. Serafina piloted with skills that pushed the small craft to its limits. Enemy fire filled the space around them. She used her telekinesis to deflect some shots while evading. Others with maneuvers that would have killed a human. Pilot Marcus held on and tried not to throw up from the extreme forces. They crashed through the command ship's hangar bay shields. Serafina landed hard enough to crumple the shuttle's landing gear, but they were inside. Alarms screamed as Korath soldiers rushed to intercept them. Seraphine's telekinesis was devastating in close quarters. She threw soldiers into walls, disarmed them with thought, and blocked their weapons' fire with energy barriers. But there were too many. Marcus grabbed a fallen soldier's weapon and provided covering fire, despite having minimal training with Korath technology. They fought their way to the disruptor control room. The weapon was almost ready. Through the view screens, they could see New Haven. Hanging vulnerable in space, Marcus ran to the control console, while Serafina held the door against reinforcements. I need 3 minutes to disable this safely. Otherwise, we risk it detonating and taking the whole ship with it. We don't have 3 minutes, Serafina said. She was bleeding from multiple wounds. Her telekinetic shields were weakening from exhaustion. Marcus looked at the weapon, then at the colony, then at Serafina. There's another option. I can overload the disruptor's containment field. It'll destroy the weapon and damage the ship, but it won't detonate fully. You'll have time to get to an escape pod. What about you? Serafina demanded. I'll be at the console when it overloads, Marcus said simply. Someone needs to maintain the shutdown sequence until the last second, or the fail-safes will prevent the overload. It has to be me. No, Serafina said flatly. We'll find another way. There's no other way, and you know it, Marcus replied. He was already working the controls. This is what humans do, Princess. We make the sacrifice play. We stand in the gap. We save people even when it costs everything. Serafina abandoned the door and crossed to him. She grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. I didn't bring you here to die. I brought you here because we're partners. Partners don't abandon each other. Marcus smiled that smile one last time. We're not abandoning each other. You're going to survive. You're going to change the Empire. You're going to prove that cooperation is stronger than conquest. That's not abandonment, Princess. That's passing the torch. The door exploded inward. Dozens of soldiers poured through. Seraphine's telekinesis lashed out, buying Marcus seconds. He finished the sequence. The disruptor's containment field began to collapse in a controlled manner. Go, Marcus shouted. 30 seconds. Serafina didn't move. She stood beside him, extending her telekinetic shield to protect them both. If you're staying, then I'm staying. We started this together. We end it together. Marcus wanted to argue, but there was no time. The weapon was overloading. The ship was shaking apart. They stood together, human and Korath, facing death side by side. Then something unexpected happened. A massive explosion rocked the ship. But it came from outside, not from the disruptor. Through the view screen, they saw a colonial mining vessel had rammed the command ship's main reactor. The governor's voice came over the emergency channel, weak and fading. Consider us even, Marcus Chen. Take care of our world. The command ship's power failed. The disruptor shut down safely without its energy source. Emergency systems activated. And in the chaos, Seraphina grabbed Marcus and flew them both out through a breach in the hull, using her telekinesis to shield them from vacuum until they reached an escape pod. They tumbled into the small craft and launched. Behind them, the command ship broke apart, its crew evacuating in similar pods. The battle was over. The rogue fleet was defeated. New Haven was saved, but the cost had been high. Good people had died on both sides. And as they drifted waiting for pickup, both Seraphina and Marcus knew that the hardest battle was still ahead. The battle for the soul of the Korath Empire itself. Part 5. The New Dawn. The imperial capital was a city that covered an entire moon. Towers of crystal and metal reached toward the stars. It was beautiful and cold, just like the empire that built it. Seraphina stood at the viewport of her ship looking down at the place where she would either secure her throne or lose everything. Marcus stood beside, his shoulder still healing from the earlier injury. They'd both been patched up after the battle, but scars remained both physical and otherwise. Are you sure about this? You could stay in the outer systems. Build support slowly. Coming here now is risky. Hiding would be worse, Seraphina said. Vex has already claimed I'm a coward who abandoned the Empire for humans. If I don't face the Imperial Council immediately, that story becomes truth. We go now. We end this now. Marcus asked. I'm not Korath. I have no standing before your council. You're my partner, Seraphina replied. That gives you standing. Besides, they need to see the human who risked everything to save a Korath princess. Actions speak louder than accusations. They landed at the Imperial Palace under heavy guard. Half the guards were loyal to Seraphina. Half were loyal to the council, which meant Vex's influence. It was impossible to tell which was which. Everyone was armed. Everyone was tense. The Imperial Council chamber was massive. 73 members representing every major Korath house and military division. They sat in concentric circles around a central platform where the accused would stand. Seraphina walked to that platform with her. Head high. Marcus walked beside her despite protests from council members. General Vex stood at the opposite side of the chamber. He'd cleaned up since his failed coup. He wore full military regalia and had clearly been preparing his case. Princess Seraphina, you stand accused of treason against the Korath Empire. You have aligned yourself with our enemies. You have fought against loyal Korath warriors. You have rejected the principles that define our civilization. How do you plead? I plead guilty to changing, Seraphina said clearly. I plead guilty to questioning traditions that no longer serve us. I plead guilty to believing the Empire can be stronger through cooperation than through conquest. If that is treason, then I am a traitor. But I suggest the Empire's definition of treason is what needs to change, not my actions. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some council members shouted support. Others demanded immediate punishment. Vex raised his hand for silence. You see, she admits her crimes. She has been corrupted by human influence. She is unfit to rule. Then let the human speak, Seraphina said, since I'm accused of being corrupted by him. Let the council hear directly from Marcus Chen. Let them judge for themselves whether his influence is corruption or evolution. 73 pairs of alien eyes focused on him. He felt the weight of their stares. Some looked at him with disgust. Others with curiosity. A few with what might have been hope. Honorable council members, Marcus began. I'm just a soldier. I don't have fancy titles or political training, so I'll speak plainly. When Princess Seraphina captured me, she ordered me to kneel. I refused, not because I disrespected her, but because humans don't kneel to threats. We kneel only to those who've earned our respect through their character and actions. He paused, letting that sink in. Over the past months, I've watched your princess. I've seen her question her own assumptions. I've seen her search for better solutions to old problems. I've seen her risk her life to protect people who aren't even her own species. She didn't do these things because I corrupted her. She did them because she's a true leader. Leaders grow. Leaders adapt. Leaders understand that yesterday's victories don't guarantee tomorrow's success, Vex interrupted. Pretty words from a species that has contributed nothing to galactic civilization. Humans are inferior in every measurable way. Your opinions are worthless. Then explain why the Empire hasn't beaten us yet, Marcus replied calmly. You have better technology, better weapons, better everything according to your measurements. Yet we've held you off for 3 years. Why? Because we fight for something you've forgotten. We fight for the belief that we get to choose our own destiny. That belief makes us dangerous opponents. It also makes us valuable allies if you're wise enough to see it. He looked around the chamber. At New Haven, human civilians flew into battle to protect your princess. They had no military training. Their ships were glorified tractors. They should have run and saved themselves. But they didn't because she'd shown them something worth protecting. That's not weakness. That's strength of a kind your empire used to understand before you started measuring power only in weapons and fear. Marcus turned to face Vex directly. You say the princess has betrayed the empire. I say she's trying to save it from itself. Empires that rule through fear eventually run out of people to conquer. Then they turn on themselves. You're seeing that now. This civil conflict, this isn't because of human corruption. It's because your own people are tired of a system that values domination over growth. The chamber was silent now. Marcus pressed forward. Princess Seraphina asked me once why humans fight so hard when we're outmatched. I told her it's because we believe tomorrow can be better than today. That's not naivety. It's not weakness. It's the force that drives all real progress. Your empire can keep doing things the old way and eventually collapse under its own weight. Or you can try something new. You can build alliances instead of subject states. You can earn loyalty instead of demanding submission. You can become the empire you claim to be instead of the tyrants you're actually acting like. He stepped back. I'm done. You can execute me for speaking truth to power. That seems to be popular around here. But before you do, ask yourselves one question. If a human from a supposedly inferior species can see the cracks in your empire, why can't you? And if you can see them, what are you going to do about it? The silence stretched. Then one council member stood. She was old even by Korath standards. I am Elder Syrinx of House Meridian. I have served the empire for 70 years. I watched Princess Seraphine's father rule, and I watched his father before him. I have seen the empire grow through conquest. But I've also seen the costs. Subject species that rebel constantly. Resources spent on occupation that could be used for advancement. Fear that breeds resentment instead of lasting peace. She looked at Seraphina. I watched you grow up, child. I saw your potential even when your father tried to mold you into his image. At New Haven, you protected human civilians at great risk to yourself. You fought rogue elements within our own military. You earned the loyalty of beings who should by all logic hate us. These are not the actions of a traitor. These are the actions of an empress. Another council member stood, then another. Soon half the chamber was standing in support, but half remained seated, including many of the military representatives. The empire was truly divided. General Vex saw his support crumbling, but he wasn't finished. This is sentiment, not strategy. The human speaks well, but words don't win wars. If we embrace this weakness, our enemies will destroy us. I don't suggest weakness, Seraphina said. I suggest strength of a different kind. Let me prove it. Give me 1 year. Let me show you that cooperation can achieve what conquest cannot. If I fail, remove me from the throne. But if I succeed, consider that maybe the Empire's greatest strength isn't in forcing others to kneel, but in inspiring them to stand with us. The debate raged for hours. Council members argued passionately on both sides. Finally, Elder Syrinx called for a vote. All in favor of granting Princess Seraphina 1 year to demonstrate her methods, raise your hands. The vote was close. 42 in favor, 31 opposed. The princess had won, but by a slim margin. Vex was stripped of rank, but not executed. He was allowed to retire with honors, which Seraphina insisted on despite Marcus's protests. We need to show mercy where possible, she explained. We need to prove we're better than our reputation. In the months that followed, Seraphina worked tirelessly. She negotiated the first formal treaty between the Korath Empire and Earth. Not a surrender. Not a subjugation. An actual alliance between equals. Marcus served as Earth's ambassador to the Imperial Court. The treaty included provisions for mutual defense, technology exchange, and cultural programs. It wasn't perfect. There were disputes and setbacks. Old hatreds didn't disappear overnight, but slowly trust began to develop. Other species watched with interest. The Thraxians were the first to request similar treaty terms. Then the Voldresians. Then others. Within 6 months, the Empire had more genuine allies than it had gained through conquest in the previous decade. There were still hardliners who opposed Seraphina. There were still conflicts and challenges. But the momentum had shifted. The Empire was changing whether everyone liked it or not. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the same throne room where he'd first met Seraphina. But everything was different now. The throne room was full of representatives from a dozen species. They were celebrating the formation of the Galactic Cooperative, a new alliance based on mutual benefit rather than domination, Empress. Seraphina stood at the center wearing robes that combined traditional Korath designs with symbols from allied species. She saw Marcus and smiled. He smiled back the same smile he'd given her 5 years ago when she'd threatened to kill him. A young Korath child approached Marcus nervously. She was part of a school group touring the palace. "Excuse me, Ambassador Chen. I've heard stories about you. Is it true you refused to kneel to the Empress when you first met her?" Marcus knelt down to the child's level. "It's true. But not because I disrespected her. I refused because I wanted to stand beside her as an equal. And eventually she understood that partners are more valuable than subjects." "Why?" the child asked. "Isn't it easier when everyone just obeys?" "Easier isn't always better," Marcus explained. "When people kneel because they're forced to, they're just waiting for a chance to stand up and fight back. But when people stand beside you because they choose to, they'll stay with you through anything. Your Empress taught me that, and I like to think I'd taught her a few things too." The child nodded seriously, then ran back to her group. Marcus stood and found Seraphina watching him with amusement. "Still spreading your human philosophy, I see." "Someone has to," Marcus replied. "Besides," she asked, "humans answer questions honestly, even when the answers are complicated." "That's one of the things I appreciate about your species," Seraphina said. "Your stubborn insistence on truth, even when lies would be more convenient." They stood together watching the celebration. Representatives from species that had once been enemies were now sharing food and stories. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions and disagreements. But there was also hope. Real, genuine hope for a future built on cooperation rather than conquest. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked. "Choosing this path? You could have ruled the old way. It would have been simpler." Seraphina shook her head. "Simpler isn't always better. You taught me that. Along with the fact that the most powerful leaders don't need subjects on their knees. They need partners standing tall." Marcus smiled. "So we did change the galaxy. We're still changing it," Seraphina corrected. "This is just the beginning. There's still so much work to do. So many species to bring into the cooperative. So many old conflicts to resolve." "Good," Marcus said. "I'd hate for things to get boring." They stood together, human and Korath, looking out at a future neither could have imagined 5 years ago. A future where strength was measured not in weapons or fear, but in the bonds forged between beings who chose to stand together. A future where a human soldier's refusal to kneel had sparked a revolution that changed an empire. And in that moment, both of them understood something profound. Change doesn't come from grand gestures or overwhelming force. It comes from small moments of courage, from choosing to smile when others expect fear, from believing in better futures when others accept inevitable decline, from standing tall when others demand you kneel. That was the real lesson. That was the real strength of humanity. Not superior technology or physical power, but the stubborn insistence that tomorrow could be better than today. If you were brave enough to work for it, the galaxy was learning that lesson now, and it would never be the same.